Hello, everyone. This is criminal profiler Pat Brown, and this is a really interesting case. It's from 2000. What year was it? 2007. So we're talking a long time ago, and but it has so many fascinating issues as far as the evidence goes that I became fascinated by it. So I'm bringing it to you as well. So welcome to the channel, and if you're new to the channel, please do like and subscribe. That's always is helpful. Keeps this channel going. And if you'd like to be in the chat room, I do always recommend that you join Patreon. The link is below. It's $5 a month, and there are 8 live shows every month, so you can participate in those and you can be part of the community. But again, if you don't do that, that's fine. Please do subscribe and understand that all of my shows are available publicly. So there's nothing hidden. So I want people to learn. That's the most important thing to me, is that people come here to learn. So now I do want to welcome everybody who is in the chat room or patrons. Welcome. And Dr. Finn just rolled in, I believe, and Kim just rolled in. And I'm glad you're here for this. This is, I tell you, it's a really interesting case. Let me get straight to it. All right. So this case is from 2007, as I said. I'm going to read from the WTAJ.com website, which is some news channel from the area that Joey Lynn Offutt went missing. We'll just call her Joey from now on. The Pennsylvania State Police announced they are still, and this is in 2025, so this is a new article. They're still searching for a Jefferson County woman who went missing in 2007. And anyone with information could be rewarded. Okay, that would be nice. Joey Lynn Offutt, she was 33 years old. She was last seen at her house on 90 block of Fugate Drive in Sykesville on July 4th, 2007. Was it really July 4th or was it July 3rd? This is one of the things we're going to look into, some of the issues of details and what is evidence and what are details that are out in the public, and what details out in the public may be a little bit questionable. Because when you're analyzing anything, if you're a profiler like myself, and I'm able to go into the police department and work with the police department and access all their files, all their police reports, everything, I will have the best information that exists. But from outside the police department, I'm with everybody else in the public. I have to go with what is publicly available. And so that's why I always call this an educational channel, because trying to solve a crime when you're not actually sure that every piece of information is accurate is problematic. But you can learn from it. And that's what I hope that people achieve coming to my channel. Okay, so she went missing on July 4th or July 3rd, 2007. I'm going to explain one of the reasons that there's this issue about when she was last seen. Her vehicle, a red 1994 Saturn with Virginia license plate number JXN8871, and visible damage on the hood, may have remained at her house for several days after she went missing. May have. I'll be getting into the issue of the car that appears and disappears and appears and disappears. And that is a really interesting part of this case. However, they have noted that the vehicle also, they're saying that the car disappeared, but was later found, which it was. On the 4 a.m. on July 12th, the local fire department was called to her home after her neighbors discovered it was on fire. After the fire was extinguished, they noted the body of an infant. Not this one, by the way. The smaller infant. Let me give you the picture of the kids. Okay, so she had these 2 children, I believe. Let me see. I think they actually say how old they are. I think they are, okay. Her 2 other children at the time, supposedly 2 and 9 years old, were not at home, so they did not succumb. This is the baby that didn't make it, okay? Because the baby was home, not this baby. This was a picture of the older baby when it was a baby. So she had 3 children. She had a child, the girl that you see here, there's no information as to who she had that child with. She is an unmarried woman. She's single. This is her fiance, Alex. I'll get the whole stuff about him. And so the first child is not his, but this one, who is now 2 at the time of her death, was his. And the baby, which was 6 weeks old, was also his. The 6-week-old baby, this little baby, is the one that died in the fire. Well, I take that back. It died, and then there was a fire. This is a very interesting case. So anyway, they found the baby body, though, in the bathtub after they extinguished the fire. They discovered there was a baby there, and that it had died before the fire was set. Okay. So 3 days later, on July 15th, her vehicle was found, abandoned at State College at the Nittany Gardens Apartments, where she used to live, which was quite interesting. Now, the apartments, we got a picture here of where they are. She lives, that's not it. She lives in Sykesville, and State College is an hour and a half away. That's where her car was found. Her little red car was found at State College after the fire. So an hour before the fire started, her car was seen there at the house. Let me just show you let me show you a picture of the appearing and disappearing car, which I'm going to get into all these details. I'm just trying to give you an overview right now. This is her home. Her mother bought that for her, by the way. And this is her home with a car. And this is the car that was found at the apartment house about an hour and a half away, where she used to live. And she used to live in that apartment with her fiance. So that's where the car was found. However, there was no sign of Joey at the scene. Nobody at the complex remembered seeing her. And also, the interesting thing about the car was that the seat was pushed way back, and she's a very short, tiny girl. And she couldn't have driven with the seat in that position. And also, the car was positioned. Let me find a picture of that. The car was, hold on a second. I thought I had, maybe, let me go back to this picture. The car was, hello, car, where are you? Okay, here we are. That's the only picture I have with the police tape, so I know this is the real picture. Was backed into the space. Well, now that's really interesting. Okay, I just, when you're analyzing a case, suddenly you come across stuff you're like, well, that I didn't see before. One of Ken Maines, I'm going to get into Ken Maines in this case. Ken Maines did a show on Joey, and he did some very good stuff, and I also thought his analysis was cockamamie. That's all I can say. Now, anybody who knows my relationship or non-relationship with Ken Maines knows that I have promoted his channel over and over again. Why? Because as a retired detective, he does very good job of explaining why he comes to his conclusions. And this I absolutely love. Because one of the problems I have with a lot of true crime channels is you have people who are not professionals analyzing and saying, oh, this and this and that. And they don't, first of all, they don't have any expertise in the field. But secondly, the whole point of, if you're trying to understand how an analysis, you want somebody to explain how they came to the conclusion. One of my issues with the FBI and their profiling methodologies is that they make claims about, oh, it's this guy and he lives with his mother and he has a dog and a green car. I'm like, where from the crime scene evidence did you get that? If you want to say that, that's fine, but tell me how you came to that conclusion. And a lot of times it's not explained, which to me means you can't explain it. If you can't explain how you came to a conclusion, then there's something off in the whole thing. I like the fact that Ken Maines does explain how he comes to his conclusions, and that's how you educate people. That's why I've promoted his channel quite often. However, anybody who knows my issues with Ken Maines is, one, he hooked up with a killer in prison, and now he's got a new television show, which he and the killer have helped solve some crimes. And I've always thought that he was gunning for a television show, and that's why he hooked up with this killer, who I think is a psychopath. And it bothered me that he presented the psychopathic killer as a profiler, which bothered me greatly. And when I said that, he came back and said that I was a crazy old lady. Anyway, oh no, crazy old grandma. I think that's what he called me. Anyway, so I just want to put that out there just so you understand that he apparently does not like me. And I don't have a problem with what he presents online, because very few people, I think Derek Lavoisier, I can't even pronounce his name correctly. I like the way he presents as well, because he tells how he came to his conclusions. So I'm good with that. I like that. And we're not always going to agree. Not every professional agrees all the time, so that's not an issue. But I did not like his hooking up with the killer and presenting him as a profiler, and his commentary on me was kind of unfair, I think, unpleasant. And I think, his ego might get the best of him sometimes. But again, there are so few people on the internet who actually explain themselves that I still like the fact that he does. Now, in this particular case, I like some of the things he explained of how you analyze crime. I do think he came to a really bizarre conclusion. So I'm going to get into that. Now, we always don't agree, as I said, and I'm not saying that I've always been right in my conclusions either. So just to be fair, we all learn as we go along, and the idea is that the more detectives can learn, the better they can do on their cases early on in the first 48, so that they can get the right person. So that's just my little speech on that. So anyway, so I am addressing the issue that I'm going to talk about. Ken Mains is what I liked in his analysis and what I think it went off the rails. So I'm going to just check on your comments just for a second here. Oh, Lady Jane just rolled in. So this is, it's going to be really, Kim is here from Maryland, as I am in Maryland as well. All right, Liz is here too. All right, so let me read the rest of this. Okay, so she was not found with the car. No one saw her driving the car, and the idea was that since the car seat was so far back, chances are she wasn't actually driving the car. And her family said there's no way she backed into that space. And I was getting to the backed into the space issue when I got myself distracted. All right, because I hadn't noticed this before. One of the things Ken Main said was he believed that the reason the person backed into the space, whoever was driving the car, was to hide the license plate so it would not be found as quickly. So I did look up Pennsylvania and license plates on the car, and apparently in Pennsylvania they only require you have the back plate. You don't have to have the front plate. So I'm thinking, okay, he might have a point there. Maybe they did back in because that way it wouldn't be as easy to see the plate number. Of course, people walking by on this side would see the plate number, but if you're just driving in the parking lot, you wouldn't see the plate number. So it would be, there's some validity to that concept. But now I'm seeing a plate on the front of the car. So I'm like, okay, maybe that doesn't make any sense then. One of the things that Joey's family said was they don't think she was driving because A, the seat was too far back, and B, she wasn't going to park. She never backed into a space because she sucked at driving in general. And it is true that for the most part, people who this is, we're talking 20 years ago, people who backed into spaces. Now you can, in the chat room, you can chime in on this. At least 20 years ago, pretty much anybody who backed into a space was male. Men love to back into spaces. I'm not sure why that is. It's cool. If your car, something happens with your car, you can throw up the hood and somebody can pull up next to you, and you can start your battery up. I mean, that's useful. I mean, I never back into spaces. I always go forward. And believe me, one day I pulled in forward and I had a problem with my car, and I'm like, son of a gun, I'm facing another car. I can't get out of the space. Nobody can come and help me. I'm gonna have to wait for that freaking car to move. So I get the point. I just never do it. But males tend to do this. Now, I also happen to live, just to update you, I live in Bowie, Maryland, in Prince George's County, which is I would say at this point, 90% African-American community. African-American women, Black women, they back the crap out of these. They back like crazy. They back into these spaces all the time. So it could be a cultural thing as well. So women will back into spaces. I just find more Black women back into spaces than white women. It's just one of those fascinating things. However, 20 years ago, with Joey, who never backed into space, back into the space, I don't buy it. I don't believe Joey was driving that car because of the seat and because of the way the car was parked. I don't think it had anything to do with the license plate. And now that I see the license plate on the front too, I'm like, okay. I don't think that had anything to do with it. This car was parked at an apartment she lived with her ex, Alexis. They lived there together in this apartment complex. And so one of the problems it comes down to, which Ken Mendes is correct about, is he says a complete stranger wouldn't end up at this apartment complex. That's ridiculous. It can't happen. So there's only three possibilities. Joey drove the car here. The boyfriend, the fiance, Alex, drove the car here. Or Joey and somebody else who was in the car. Somebody was driving the car, but Joey was in the car, and she guided him here. Those are the three possibilities. All right, so authorities now believe that Offutt was met with foul play. Why is that? Well, she's never been seen again. Okay, so her body was not found in the house that burned down. Oh, it didn't burn down. It burned a lot. Okay, the baby was found dead. Not this baby, the other baby. The baby was found dead in the bathtub. Her body was not found in the house, but she's never been seen again. So she's either managed to run away and start a new life someplace, which has happened, or she's dead. Two choices. Authorities now believe that she was met with foul play. Interesting. And is now deceased. She is described as a very trusting, naive, and religious woman. Okay, let me go back to foul play. How would she end up deceased due to foul play? Either she was killed before the fire was set by somebody, or she left the house and was killed by the person who was with her, or she left the house on her own, went wandering, and somebody else killed her because, serial killer, she was like wandering around trying to hitchhike a ride, and the serial killer picked her up and she died. And he buried her someplace. No, she's never been found. All three of those are possibilities. And one of the things you have to do when you're going to analyze a crime is not get tunnel vision and say this couldn't have happened when it could have happened. So there's three possibilities. So we're going to look at all three of those possibilities. Anyway, that's the basics of the crime. So now I'll get into the details. All right, this is really, I'm actually fascinated by this crime. It's just it's crazy. Yes, the baby was already dead. Now, how was the baby dead? The fire did not kill the baby. The baby was in a bathtub. The baby was dead before the fire started. One of the problems I have is I do not have an access to the cause of death, an autopsy report on the baby. So the baby could have been killed. Oh, no, let me put this way. Okay. The baby could have died a number of ways. One, could have been a SIDS death. She could have been home with the baby and went into the room and, oh my God, the baby's dead. Now, some people say, why is the baby in the bathtub? Okay, that's another interesting question. Now, some people have said, which is not entirely unreasonable, that sometimes a mother will put a baby in a bathtub because it is a safe place. In other words, the baby can't roll off a bed. If they're not putting it in the crib, they might set it in the bathtub because the baby will be fairly safe in the bathtub. I mean, it's a kind of a crib, right? So the baby, she could have found the baby dead in the crib. She could have found the baby dead on the bed. She could have placed the baby in the bathtub, coming back later and found the baby dead. Could have been SIDS, in theory. So the baby could have died of natural causes prior to the fire. Or the baby was murdered, which is the other option. How would the baby be murdered? Now, there's nothing, I have no information on that. The baby could have been drowned. The baby could have been smothered. Smothering is, in my opinion, the more likely, in spite of the fact the baby's in the bathtub, smothering is more likely. It's very hard to determine when a baby's been smothered that it wasn't SID. So it's and babies get smothered for a number of reasons. Because somebody doesn't want them anymore, or because that little critter keeps screaming and it annoys the crap out of them. So somebody puts their hand over their mouth or puts a pillow over them to shut them up. Then you have a smothered baby. And why the baby ends up in the bathtub could be a staging thing, but we don't know. So we don't know if the baby died naturally or the baby died because it was murdered. Okay, Christoph says, or she was killed because the baby was killed first. Okay, hold on a second. Shaken baby syndrome. That's another possibility. Thank you for adding that one in. Who was killed first? If she was killed. Now you're assuming, I'm only saying assuming because at that point you would say that the theory would be that, let me go back here, Christoph. She was killed because a baby was killed first. So you're saying that somebody killed the baby, not this baby. This baby, I wish I had a picture of her holding the baby that died, but I don't have that. So we use this poor baby as a substitute. She was home and somebody killed the baby. And then she was like, oh my God, you killed my baby. So the person killed her. Or she killed the baby. And the person who was the father of the baby, this guy, was like, you killed my baby. And he killed her. All possibilities. Or the person who took, Claire says, the person who took or abducted killed the baby. Okay, so there is another theory. And we're going to get to the Ken Main's theory about this, which he believes somebody else was involved with her. She had a second boyfriend, another guy, and that person may have been involved. But this is, okay, gory details. Okay, the maggot issues. Okay, the baby, they determined the baby was dead for quite a while. The baby was not killed in the fire. The baby was not killed right before the fire. The baby was dead for quite a while. And if abducting her, why bother to kill the baby? You just leave the baby there. It'll pass away on its own. That's probably true. Do we know if the boyfriend, okay, this is a good question. Do we know if the boyfriend was the father of the baby? The answer to that is yes, he was. However, the DNA was done after the fact. So he may have thought that he wasn't the father of the baby. Okay. Now let me go to, before I get too much further on this, let me go to how things played out, and the issue of, I want to go to, all right, this is trickier than you think. I want to bring in Ken Main's, again, because some of the stuff he said was good, and I want people to learn from the good stuff he said, but I also think he went off the rails on the analysis. And I want to point out why I think he went off the rails on the analysis, because we all can, that can happen to all of us. But okay, let me find, okay. I'm going to pull up his, I have the transcript now. Okay. Okay. So he says, I'm going to go through some of the transcript because I want to point out issues as we go along as to what happened in this crime and why he is coming up with some of the good stuff and some of the stuff I'm like, okay. So anyway, he's pointing out that she has a baby. She has an older child with another person. That is true. And just to let you know who the players are here. Okay. So this is her older daughter, who is not her boyfriend's or fiance's child. The younger girl is her fiance's child, as is the baby. Okay. Oh, by the way, I forgot to mention this. I also watched Disappeared. The link will be below. This is very fascinating. I got a lot out of this. I watched it on Prime Video. Cost me about $1.99. and very interesting because this guy, that's her fiance, speaks throughout the whole thing, and I find him really interesting. Anyway, so Disappeared, check it out. So anyway, this is Alexis Brolin Jr. It says Joey's former boyfriend. Well, he's former because she's maybe dead, and he remarried. I mean, he married. He was married before Joey, and now he married. He didn't get married to Joey, even though he had 2 kids with her, and then they had an on and off again relationship. Pointing out, let me stop here to say that they lived together, and then they lived separately. Mom bought her that cute little house so that she could have a comfortable place to live. She apparently supposedly had seen some psychiatrist or psychologist because she had some issues. Her mother said she was highly naive, and the psychologist said, what age do you think she's at? And she said, well, I think my daughter's kind of like, she's not like 33, she's like 16. And the psychologist said, no, she's more like 14. Basically saying she was highly naive and very teenagery acting, and she wasn't. She had some level of not being as mature as she could be. So anyway, she's hooked up with the boyfriend here, Alex, and they live in a place together. She gets pregnant. She has that first child. Then, for whatever reasons, they don't move in together, and she gets the mother buys a cute little house for her. And she then can have a place. Mother wanted to have a nice little place to live. And she was apparently sort of she had some social workers involved, so I don't think her income was too good. But why the heck Alexis, having a couple kids with her, wasn't participating properly in being her actual husband? I don't know. So she So the mom, and let me show you her mom. This is her mom. This is Sherry Hallett, her mother. She lived in Virginia. So she was living in Pennsylvania. The boyfriend was in Pennsylvania. And the mother of Joey was living in Virginia. And sometimes she helped watch the kids, and she bought this little house for her, thinking that this would give her some stability. And so fiance / boyfriend, whatever the hell he was, Alex, would come to visit her. I think he had a couple other kids, but anyway, he came to visit her. And at the time that everything went to hell, the older child was with the grandmother, because that wasn't his kid, was with grandmother in Virginia, and he had the older child, and then the baby was home with Joey. So the idea was that Joey was going to have this relaxing time where she was just going to take care of the baby and didn't have the other 2 kids to have to deal with. All right, that's nice. So that's a situation. At the time, everything went down. Okay, so now, what went down? All right, I'm going to go back. I'm going to his transcript, because I want to point out some of the good things he says, along with some of my issues with some of the things. All right, he said that a couple of weeks previous, she had been visiting her family in West Virginia. Sorry, it was Virginia, but okay, we all make those mistakes. And the oldest child was staying with the mother. She was overwhelmed with these 3 kids, and now with a newborn. All right, that could be true. And she might have been suffering from, we don't know, from postpartum depression. All right, I want to stop here. The postpartum depression crap is brought up in almost every case that a child ends up dead or goes missing, or the mother goes missing. There's always this postpartum depression. Like, every woman who has a kid, it goes into postpartum depression. Now, mind you, postpartum depression can be a thing. It can be. And it can be, I am not so big on the chemical issue of it, but I do recognize the fact that when you have a baby, your life changes. Sometimes you don't get enough help. The baby makes you tired. You're up all night long, and it's exhausting. And so I have no problem with postpartum depression. But sometimes I'm bothered by the fact that it's thrown out there as some kind of constant, either a motive or excuse or whatever. Now, I'm going to point this out right now. Why don't I point this out right now? The husband says, the fiance, whoever he is, he says, I'm trying to find it now. Is it here? No. I think everybody assumed postpartum depression, he says, with depression to the point where she was on medication. But then the police say, we never had anything that corroborated that with anything. We didn't find any prescriptions. And okay, they didn't find any prescriptions. So although there is this theory out there that she had postpartum depression, which is why she acted bizarrely, there's no proof that she had postpartum depression. She had actually, in reality, a lot of support. I mean, her mom was really good at supporting her. Theoretically, the fiance, Alex, did take the other child and let her relax with just the baby at home. She wasn't working, so it wasn't a huge change of lifestyle. And she had a new house and she had a nice car. I don't know that there's any evidence that she had postpartum depression at all. So I think we should take that off the plate because I think it's used wrongly in this case. All right. So anyway, the baby's 6 weeks old. Now, here's what happens on July 3rd. Okay. On July 3rd, this is what is claimed by the boyfriend. All right. Let me find this. I'm going to put this up here. All right. So let's go back to, so these were the players in the game. These are her with her two other children. That's the boyfriend / fiance. She did have a ring, so they were supposedly planning to get married, and that's mom. All right. So, but let's go to him. Okay. So last time she is seen alive, supposedly. I'm going to get into that fact that she might have been seen alive 2 days later. He claims that on July 3rd, and I want to use the word claims, and I'm really bothered by with Ken Maines, one of the things he is failing to do, which bothers me because he is a retired detective, and I would think he would bring this up. He says this is what happened, but it isn't what happened. It's a claim. Claim is something you should always keep. That word should always be in your head. Unless it's proven, it's a claim. He claims that on July 3rd, they were at this house before it burned up. Okay. And she was supposedly bathing the baby in the kitchen sink, which he thought was inappropriate because, well, first of all, I want to say that as a mother, I have bathed babies in a kitchen sink. It's the best place to bathe a newborn, an infant. Sometimes you put like one of those little spongy things in there, to hold the baby. But you don't go bathe the baby in the bathtub because the bathtub is too big. You can't reach over. The baby's too small. So you bathe the baby in this kitchen sink, which is super popular and super acceptable. And I say sometimes use a little spongy thing. It kind of makes a little platform for the baby to sit on. Nothing wrong with that at all. But he claims that the kitchen sink wasn't clean. And so he got upset with her that he's like, hey, the sink's not clean. Shouldn't be bathing the baby in there. That's what he states. That's what he claims, something that occurred. Okay, so let me see if I have the thing here. Okay, that's him. Okay, where is it? Okay. And then he said that after he told her this, she didn't take the criticism too well. Whenever we left, it was not our typical parting. I must have really just hit a nerve. And whenever she's ready, she'll come back to me and discuss whatever the problem was. Okay, so what he's saying here is I was upset with her because on July 3rd, that she was bathing the baby in a sink, which I thought was dirty. And she got offended. And I left. And then he has this confusing thing, which makes no sense to me. On one hand, he says, apparently I struck a nerve, but I figured she'd call me. She figured she'd talk to me. And then when she's ready, she'd talk to me. But then on the other hand, he says that she wouldn't do that. Let me go back and look at this again. She doesn't take criticism too well. So in other words, he's saying here it's a normal thing. But then he's saying, what was he saying here? Whenever we left, it was not our typical parting. Well, she doesn't take criticism too well, how often did it not take too well? So he's saying this is abnormality. But then he says, I must have hit a nerve. Whenever she was ready, she'd come back to discuss the problem. Make up your mind. Either this was an abnormality and only happened this one time, or it happened all the time. So this is suspicious because he can't keep his story straight. Just want to say. So essentially, he's saying on July 3rd, she got pissed at him because he criticized her, and he left, and then he wouldn't return. She wouldn't return his phone calls. She called, and I was surprised. Well, if this was her normal methodology of just giving you the cold shoulder, why were you surprised? Why are you surprised? Then he says, I started to get a little mad, and he chuckles, which I think is understandable. Okay. Really? Okay. She has your baby, your 6-week-old baby, and she won't talk to you. She won't return your phone calls. And you just think, well, she's just being herself. I got her upset. She don't want to talk to me. She's got your baby, your son. Little issue there. Rainey says, I'm sure the sink was clean. Maybe it was a dual sink. No, this is 2 years. This was like 20 years ago. Nobody had those freaking dual sinks. 20 years ago, you had a sink. Sounds like, Frida, thank you. Sounds like a typical buildup to a domestic violence murder. Perhaps. I can't imagine the mother not cleaning the sink first, says Lady Jane. Maybe. I'm sure the sink was clean. Maybe it was no dual sink. We don't have this. I find it odd the baby was found in the bathtub. Alexis didn't like baby being bathed in a dirty sink, so then maybe it was moved to the bathtub. That's sort of the claim. Now, here's the problem. Oh, I just put a towel in there. There you go. There's another one. Yeah. My mom bathed me in a sink. Oh, wait, where's that? But here's the point. Read this again. Alexis didn't like the baby being bathed in a dirty sink. Okay, I want to stop right there because I want you to be profilers. Alexis said he didn't like the baby being bathed in a dirty sink. Now, what's your comment? I'm going to stop right here. I want your comments on that. Really? That is unusual. Wow. That is unusual. No, I'm waiting for the comment here. Come on, profilers. What's the problem with this? He said he didn't like the baby being bathed. There we go, Chris. He claims it happened. Maybe it didn't. Exactly. No, that's exactly the point. He claims that. It doesn't mean it's true. And when you're examining a case and somebody tells you something, it doesn't mean it's true. That can be an explanation or a claim or a fabrication in order to then handle something, shall we say. Yes, we only have his word for it. Therefore, it is not the truth. It is a claim. I love the word claim, and it's not used often enough. They'll say he said. Okay, he said is not good enough. Say he claimed. All right, now, here's what happened with Ken Maines. He said this, which is, okay, I'm going to explain why I think it is a problem. Okay, but he didn't have to say that. He didn't have to say that. He could have said, we talked, we had a good time, went for a walk. Okay, he's making a very good point, but I think it's an incorrect point. His belief is, just to let you know, he thinks that he has nothing to do with this, what happened to Joey. He thinks he's innocent for the most part. He thinks she is 100% involved, either alone or with somebody else that is not him. Okay. What Ken Maines has just said is that he said this, and that a guilty person would have not said they had an argument prior to the moment that the woman ends up disappearing. That generally speaking, they would say, oh, we said, we had a great evening together and I left and she said, love you. And I said, love you. And you want to leave it looking like everything was good. before you left. That is not incorrect. I agree with Ken Maines on that. And he says it's unusual. He believes he's telling the truth because he could have said they had a really nice time. He went home and the next day couldn't get in contact with her. He could have said that. And therefore, Ken Maines thinks he's telling the truth. I disagree. I think that you want to take that into account, that he could have said something different and made himself look better. But on the other hand, if you look at the history of Joey and him and what he might be trying to accomplish by saying she was annoyed with him and gave him the cold shoulder, he might be trying to make it look like she was having an issue. And because she was having an issue, she then therefore did something that was a bad thing. So, and then he wants to put himself in a good light. Now, what he does after this is very interesting to me. All right, so I'm going to read some of my comments here. Maines rules out Alex a little bit along the way because of the argument. And then he has this other issue. He says the car, after the car was seen at 3 a.m. a week later, before the fire started, and at 4 a.m. the fire started. So obviously the person who was driving the car started the fire. This is true. And the car ended up an hour and a half away. There's Sykesville, and an hour and a half away, the car ends up at State College. Now, Clearfield, and wondering why Clearfield is in there, that is actually where Alex lived. He lived 30 minutes away from Joey in Sykesville, and he would come back and forth. So whoever started the fire drove the red car away from Sykesville. So at 3 o'clock, the car was there. Then at 4 o'clock, the fire started. The next day, the car was not there. And a number of days later, I can't remember, 4 or 5, 6 days later, it was found at State College, which was an hour and a half away. So Ken says, why the hell would he start this fire and then drive an hour and a half away? How was he going to get home? Because it waited an hour back to his house and an hour back to Clearfield. How would he get there? He'd have to hitchhike. He'd have to get somebody to give him a ride. I mean, he says this, don't they, having the police checked out his alibi, blah, blah, blah. Okay, he's got a good point there. So keep this in mind. Would he, if he killed her, set the fire at 3 o'clock in the morning, at 4 o'clock in the morning, then he have to drive the car an hour and a half away to this place where they used to live, and then somehow get home an hour back toward that direction to his house. How would he do that? Okay, keep that in mind. All right. However, let's go to what happened in the days. I've got a whole list of the time frame. Okay, so all right. Hold on a second. I got to find the exact time frame. I had to go back and look at the exact time frame for everything because the time frame was really bugging me. What happened every day? Now, here's an interesting thing. Well, let's talk about claims again. I want to show you this picture. So she was last seen by Alex on just July 3rd. They had this tiff over the baby being bathed in the sink. He leaves, and he was able to contact her again. On July 5th, a neighbor says he sees her pushing a stroller down the street, says hello, and she doesn't respond. On July 5th, which would mean she was alive. Alex left the home and she was alive. She was alive on July 3rd. She was alive on July 4th. She was alive on July 5th. So she was killed later. Or she ran away later, right? She was living in the house. And eventually but this is the concept. Eventually, on many days later, she set the house on fire and drove away with that car, parked it at the old apartments they used to live in, and ran off and disappeared. or she was over here at the house and wasn't responding to Alex, and some guy came that she met on the internet, and he hung out with her. Ken Maines gets into this, is where I think he goes off the rails. And then they both go in the car. Somehow the baby gets killed. They both go in the car, and guess why the car is, it looks like a guy was driving the car, and he, the seat's back, he backs in, and then somehow he gets rid of her. Anyway, doesn't make sense. But anyway, let's go back to the third. So on the third, they have the argument. On the fifth, the neighbor claims he sees her. And here I'm going to use the word claims again. You got the word claims has to go into every profiler and any student of any detective's vocabulary. A neighbor claims he saw her on July 5th walking the baby on the stroller. Now, mind you, July 3rd was the last she was seen by Alex. And was it the 12th that the house burned down? So we're talking quite a many days away. At what point did the police actually talk to the neighbor and say, when was the last time you saw her? Now, I'm going to say, unless there's some really good reason why you would know the exact date you saw her, he could be off by 2 to 3 to 4 to 5 days. Oh, I saw her on, and he's guessing, because he's got no reason to know that it was July 5th unless he gives the police an exact reason it's July 5th. If he said, it was my wife's birthday on July 5th, and I was walking to the store to buy her a present, and I ran into her. It's the only time I've run into her in the last month. Then I'll believe you. But if he's just generally thinking that he saw her on July 5th, I don't buy that story for a minute. I think she was dead on July 3rd. 100% dead on July 3rd. And the baby appears to have been dead pretty much back then. And also, what did the police find in the house? The police found in the house, after they found the baby was dead, the baby was dead in the bathtub. The fire was set in 2 different places, in the bathtub and then in another area of the house. Somebody really worked hard to make sure the baby's body was burned up, and they wanted the house to burn down. It didn't work because the neighbor saw it quite quickly. So that didn't exactly happen, but they found in the house her purse with her ID in it. The car keys weren't there, but they found her purse and ID. In one place, it didn't burn down. They also found maggots all over this hamburger that was left on the counter. And by able to look at how long the maggots were there, they determined that the maggots were probably there from somewhere between July 3rd and July 5th. So in other words, she wasn't in the house, in my opinion, since July 3rd. Now, Ken Maines thinks she was in the house during this time because the car kept coming and going and coming and going. I'm not kidding you. They said, and then in the documentary, they say, here's the house. Oh, look, there's no car. Then there is a car. Then there isn't a car. Then there is a car. Do you know where that information came from, that the car was missing on certain days? I want you to weigh in on this. Where do you think the information came that this car was not at the house on a couple days? Oh, this is also true while I'm waiting on that comment. He didn't make any effort to get inside the house. He sure shit didn't. He goes to the house day after day. He's calling her and saying, hey, I'm so sorry. By the way, he's saying, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to upset you. He's apologizing day after day after day. He shows up at the house and he doesn't go in the house. Do you know why he doesn't go in the house? Oh, thank you. There we go. Okay. From him. Exactly, Tanya. The only person that seems to say the car wasn't there was Alex. So I think Alex was trying to give the impression that if the car moves, then doesn't Joey have to be alive if the car keeps freaking moving? The car goes and comes. The car goes and comes. Joey has to be alive. I think he's trying to get that impression out that Joey is alive. But what's odd at the same time is that if Joey is alive, one of the things that's odd is that my mail is piling up on the doorstep, and maggots are crawling around on the ground beef, and her purse hasn't moved. If she's alive, do you think she's going to be in a house where she steps over the mail on the doorstep and that she allows Hamburger to sit out on the kitchen counter getting maggots? It is clear to me she was dead on right away. The car coming and going makes zero sense. So either, now Ken Main's theory is that Ken went really off the rails on this. He believes she was on the internet because she had once been on the internet, and I guess some guy tried to get her to send her some naked pictures, and maybe she's supposedly naive, so she fell for that. So Ken Main says, well, he thinks that she hooked up with some guy on the internet, and the reason the car went missing is because she went to he said, hey, pick me up at the bus station. So she picked him up at the bus station, and at the moment she was picking him up at the bus station, Fiance Alex shows up at the house, and the car is gone. And then this guy is living in the house with her and driving about, but he's living in the house. They step over the mail and they leave the maggot infested hamburger on the counter and the dead baby in the bathtub. I mean, who does that? I mean, this makes zero sense, absolutely zero sense. And the only reason we think the car isn't there is because Alex says it wasn't there. And because her purse is there with her ID, baby's dead, and the maggots are in the hamburger sitting on the counter, I'm going to say she was dead very early on, and that car never freaking moved unless Alex moved it. So I think Alex is a lying dog. And so, and by the way, the thing about that she's hooking up with somebody on the internet, check this out. Inside Joey's house, investigators find a computer. But because the internet has been turned off for a month due to non-payment, and the hard drive offers nothing revealing. How could she be in a relationship online if she didn't have any internet for a month? This makes zero sense. So this imaginary person that for whatever reasons Ken Mains decides exists, because he says he doesn't believe Alex is involved, and he says that the only way this car could end up at the apartment house is because Joey knows where the apartment house is. So therefore, either Alex moved it, which he says Alex wasn't involved, or Joey moved it, or Joey had somebody, come with the car and go to that space. So Joey's hooked up with some guy on the internet who hardly knows her and she hardly knows him. But for some reason, he's in on killing a baby. And she's like, oh, let's go put the car at my apartment complex I used to live at. Because that makes sense. It's absolutely nonsense. I'm like, logic is something you're supposed to use when you analyze crimes. And I'm not seeing it here. I don't know what happened to Ken Mains on this thing. But I mean, he has some good concepts in here in his how you should look at certain things. But then he goes off the rails on this concept that Alex couldn't be involved because of why. Now, mind you, I want to let you know a little bit about Alex. First of all, Alex, let's go back to Alex just so we can understand who Alex is. Alex is a scumbag, just to let you know. This guy, first of all, he gets her pregnant twice without marrying her, doesn't live with her. I don't know what the heck's going on with him. But apparently he was at a drug issue. And then he got nailed after this all went down. More recently, he got nailed for running a methamphetamine ring. He's going to, I don't know, he should be in prison for the rest of his life, probably. Methamphetamine ring, when they went to his house, they found 2 pounds of meth in his house and 10 handguns. And he's a piece of shit. Okay. He just is a piece of garbage. And so that he was this nice guy before, Ken Main says, well, he might have been a drug user and then became a drug dealer, but that doesn't mean he's a murderer. I'm going to say it doesn't make you look good either, because you are an unethical, immoral creature who is taking advantage of a girl who is, as people say, slightly naive and kind of immature. And we're supposed to believe everything you say. So you're the last person to see her. Apparently, she's dead the day this all goes down. In my opinion, she's dead that day. Because in my opinion, the baby was dead that day. And the hamburgers getting maggots on the counter she's not going to not look at her mail. She's not going to put the hamburger back in the freezer and the refrigerator. She doesn't exist on that day, which is why all this stuff keeps going on. But meanwhile, he's going, I call her all the time. I'm calling you to find out. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. And then he goes over there and he goes and visits. But when he goes and visits, she's not there and she doesn't answer. Oh, he doesn't have a key to the house. I'm going to stop right here. Let's go to the key issue. Oh, Lord. He shows no emotion. Well, he did smile. Yeah. Please do not talk about other cases while we're on this show. Just want to say that to the chat room. Do not distract with Wendy and Adelson. That's what you talk about before the show, not during the show, because it's distracting to me and to everybody else who's in the chat room. So stop doing that. Do not talk about that. Let's see. Aisha says, Ken thinks she was in the house because according to Ken, Alexis was so innocent that whatever he says is gospel. Oh, she's also bad at cleaning. So maggots and all. Well, it's interesting. I'm not sure what sent him in this direction. I really don't, but I did find that one of the things Ken Maines was talking about in this case was victimology. He goes on about victimology, Joey's victimology. She was immature. She was this, she was that. Victimology, she could have had this. He never talks about Alex. Now, he's a suspect, but there is, when you talk about any player in any kind of game, you do look at victimology, but you also look at the offender or the possible offender and what his personality issues are and what's going on in his life. But he seems to want to give Alex a pass on all of this, and I do not understand why. He's all over her being a messed up mom. And the concept that he does admit that she doesn't seem to be smart enough to figure out how to run away and hide herself. So I think he admits that she's dead, but I think he's trying to say that since she wasn't smart enough to figure this out on her own, she had this illusion, this guy from the internet, because she didn't have internet, come to her house and help her kill her baby, or she already killed the baby, and then help her leave and then got rid of her. It's the most nonsensical thing I've ever heard. When you have, on the other hand, a fiance who is clearly a psychopath, in my opinion, because he's a piece of crap. I mean, he's a drug user, but he's a methamphetamine running a ring. He's got 10 guns in his house. He's putting his family at risk. He got remarried, but that family's at risk. The kids are at risk. I'm sorry. I'm going to say that guy should be in prison the rest of his life and probably had something to do with this crime. How can you eliminate him? Because you think the main reason is he was willing to admit he had an argument with her. And Ken says he doesn't know how he got back from that location because it was too far away. Well, yeah, okay. If she was going to run away, it would make more sense that she would run to a bus station, not to a place that she lived once upon a time. What good is that going to do her? I mean, really, why would she go there to a place she once lived? And why would she tell some guy she was with, let's go to the place I once lived, and park in the parking lot, and then what? How does that make a damn bit of sense? So while he's saying Alex wouldn't do that, why he's somehow excusing how she would do that and her imaginary boyfriend from the internet. Makes no sense. So going back here, okay, so he lives in Clearfield. So if he was in Sykesville burning down the house, which, by the way, somebody had to buy gas and go burn down the house, burning up specifically the baby and then the rest of the house. That is really most of the time a male kind of thing and not a female kind of thing. Somebody had to be very specific about the plans, and she's supposed to be mental age of a 14-year-old, and yet she's cleverly committing arson. I don't buy it. So anyway, the car's there. So the car was there, and then the car disappears. So somebody buys the gas. Ken says, well, did they check all the gas stations in the area to see if she bought gas? Well, probably they didn't come up with anything. You know why? Because fiance lived 30 minutes away in Clearfield. He could have gotten that gas from any damn place. I don't know what the detectives did, but let's say that. He sets his place on fire. Oh, let me get to this. Why does he think the place was set on fire? Okay, so he claims that, okay, so days go by. So fiance is calling her, and he's stopping by the house. And every time he stops by the house, the the car disappears. The car keeps disappearing when he sees it, but oh, she's not there. And then the social worker shows up. The social worker comes to the house and finds the car there, and finds the mail on the doorstep, and peeks in the house. Oh, I forgot about the key thing. Okay, he goes to the house, and he doesn't go in the house because he doesn't have a key. Let me stop again. Why doesn't he have a key? Somebody tell me about the key thing. I'm going back now. Sorry, I got distracted. What about the key? The oldest daughter is with her mother because her mother is taking care of her. That's not his kid. The other daughter is supposedly with him. He wants someone else to discover. That is a good point. A lot of times when somebody's killed somebody, they want to make sure they're not the one to discover anybody dead. They want somebody else to discover. They keep waiting and waiting and waiting for somebody to go in and discover. Very good, Tanya. That is excellent. That is one reason. What's the other issue about the key? He did try to make sure the house burned down. The person who set the house on fire set the house on fire in two different places with the intent of the house burning down. It's just the neighbors saw it quickly enough to get the fire department there way quicker than they expected. Okay, Liz says, with all the gaps in time, moving cars, it seems that Alexis was staging the scene, getting rid of Joey's body. In my opinion, it's most likely that he got rid of her body on the first day. In other words, he was there at her house when they had this argument, and he had his own car, and she had her car there. If he did something to her, my belief is he removed her body that night, took her someplace, and then he started putting this story into play that, we had an argument, but I keep calling her and she won't answer the phone. Now, how the baby ended up dead is a whole nother issue. And why, one thing Ken Main says, which is an interesting point, why, if he took away her body, if he killed the baby too, why didn't he take the baby too? That's a good question. Ken Main does have some good questions. Why didn't he take the baby too? And just make it look like they both ran away. But it seems like he was trying to pretend she was still there at the house, taking care of things. In other words, she wasn't responding to him, but she was still in the house. I think he wanted, this is what I look at it. I think he was trying to put forth the story that she wasn't responding to him, but she was still in the house with the baby. Therefore, he has nothing to do with anything from that point on. Anything that happened then, it was her fault. And she was coming and going, so she was alive. I think he wanted to look like she was alive. That's my belief. That's what it looks like to me, as far as if I were going to make a crime analysis. And if I said he was a perpetrator, I would say something happened that day. The baby and the mother were both dead that day. He removed her body. I don't know what he was thinking with the baby, whether the baby, wait, take it back. The baby could have been alive. And he could have put the baby in the bathtub and said, I'll deal with that later. And the baby died a natural death, just from, starvation, lack of hydration. Baby died. Or he came back and said, enough of that. Or the baby was screaming and he killed the baby, and then she was upset, so he killed her, but he dumped the baby in the bathtub and took her body away because he wasn't thinking about burning the house down at the time. The problem is, everybody thinks everything is done cleverly, like in some kind of, Hollywood show. It's not. A lot of things are panic. They're panic moments. Oh my God, what do I do? And then you do something, and then you try to fix what you did. And then you try to cover up what you did. So it goes in pieces. It's not rational. And I think the problem is people want it to be rational, like some kind of mastermind. And this is not a mastermind. She would not be a mastermind, but he wouldn't be a mastermind either. But I want to know about the key thing. I keep going. It could have been he was high on meth. Good point. Because he was druggy. You know what I mean? That's possible. She seemed to have moved on. No, I have no proof that she moved on from any relationship. I don't think that's true. She didn't want him to have a copy. Why not? It's her fiance and the father of her 2 children. He doesn't live there. True. But she doesn't trust him. Maybe. Or maybe he lied about not having a key. Possibly. It gets really complicated there. Considering what kind of guy he was, I'm like, so let's look at it. She's supposedly immature and maybe a little incapable of dealing with things. And that's the mother of your 2 children. And she's got the little baby. Wouldn't you want to have some way to access the house in case there was an issue? Wouldn't you want that? Wouldn't you say, honey, I need a key to your house. Let's say something happens to you. I have to be able to get in the house and help you out. What if I need to stop by the house? I'm the father of your 2 children. I'm your husband, basically your husband. But he doesn't have a key to the house. I find that kind of hard to believe. And if it was true, then you wonder why, as you point out, why didn't he have a key? Does she not trust him? And also, if he is as squirrely as he is, who says he didn't make a key to the house? Because think about this. Somebody went in that house and set the fire. How did they get in the house? Well, either it was her, as Ken Main seems to think, or her and her imaginary internet lover, because she had the only key, or he had a damn key and he walked right in the house and set the fire. Just another claim. Exactly. Just another claim. And that's the problem. When you believe claims, you get yourself in trouble when you believe claims. So I believe he had a key. I find it hard to believe he didn't, because somebody came in and set the fires, and I know it was not her. I don't believe for a minute, because I believe she was dead from day one. She was dead. So let's see what else I have here. It's a bit of a complicated case. So we know that her purse was found. Okay, so let's look what the police found there. When the police found the baby dead in the bathtub, then they found a purse with her ID in it. So you're going to tell me she's going to run away, but she's not going to take a purse and her ID. She's only going to take her keys. How is she going to survive out in the world? That makes 0 sense. So basically, let's say she accidentally smothered a baby, or the baby died of SIDS and she thought she was guilty. So she wanted to run away. Now, mind you, she'd been pretty good about her children. As a matter of fact, the mother took her older daughter. She was very worried because daughter needed some kind of earplugs because she had some kind of sensitivity to something. She actually forgot to give them. And so she put them in an envelope the day before she went missing. She put them in an envelope and sent them right away to her mother, so her mother would have those for her daughter. So she seems like she was a good mother. She may have been a little bit, teenagery like, but I don't know who decided she was like that level of, only 14 or 16 or whatever. Some psychologist said that. Was she immature? Maybe. But 2 other children survived their babyhood. This child was surviving the babyhood. And did she need some maybe support and assistance? Maybe she did. Maybe she had bad taste in men. And so her mother was like, oh, there she goes again. She's just being silly and stupid. Maybe so, but it seemed like she loved her children. And so she was trying to be a good mother. It seemed very much that way. So I see no evidence that she would kill her baby and then run away. Now, mind you, as Ken Mains does say, women have run away from their children before. And just because a parent says, and he does point this out, and I think this is accurate. He said, just because a parent says something doesn't mean it's true. And I agree with him 100% on that. For example, the mother said that she would never run away. He said, well, but there are women who have run away, and the family said they wouldn't do it. And then they've been found 20 years later without those kids. And they said, yeah, I just couldn't stand it anymore. So he's correct on that. Mom says that she would never back her car into the space because she's a crappy driver. And Ken says, we can't believe that because mom says that. And again, I agree with him in general. I have parents who say she would never open the door to a stranger, and they do it all the time. My daughter would never get into a car with a stranger, and they do it all the time. My daughter would never, and they do it all the time. So I agree with him that you can't necessarily believe just what a parent says. I'm totally okay with that. But on the other hand, if you're following the evidence says that because of the maggots on the hamburger, the baby dead in the tub before the fire was set, that her purse was there, her ID was there. And the only evidence we have that the car came and went and seemed to come from him, that clearly, to my opinion, she was dead on July 3rd. I don't believe the neighbor with the July 5th crap at all, because that's, again, a claim that I don't think he probably just doesn't know what date he saw it. So everything points to, not proof, but points to she was dead on the day that he last saw her. And all of his, I called her, I did all this stuff, it looks to me like he's just trying to make it look like she's alive. And meanwhile, I would speculate that something went wrong that day and he removed her body with his own vehicle, because they said when they looked at her vehicle, they checked her vehicle out and they came up with nothing from her vehicle, like no DNA, no dead body in the vehicle. I don't believe he used her vehicle to remove her body. I would believe he would use his own vehicle because it was there. And he had a week to wash the heck out of that car, vacuum, wash, whatever he's going to do with it. I don't know what the police did with his car. You would think the police would be all over his car. I see nothing in the documentary about that. So I don't know. Like Ken Main says, sometimes you don't have the information. And I don't have that information. The other thing, I want to bring this up. So Ken Main says one of the reasons he believes that she did it, she was involved, is this. Okay. Says he believes that it's Joey's involvement would be Joey and somebody else might be involved, and then it's because he told, when he couldn't find her there, he left a note that said, if you don't call me, I'm going to call the police. This is the biggest thing that Ken Main thinks. He thinks that the trigger. He told her in a note, he left a note, pushed it through the door and said, if you don't contact somebody, I'm going to call the police. He said that was the trigger that she came back and burnt the house down and ran away. And then he says this. I think that occurred. He called the police, I think, before the fire was started. Not true. What actually happened was this. He met with the social worker, and the social worker said, because they're at the house, the car's there, I believe. They're at the social worker and here at the house, and the social worker says, it's been a week, you need to call the police. I don't know why the social worker couldn't freaking do it, but she tells him he should call the police. Guess when he calls the police? After he meets with the social worker, he meets the social worker, let me get this straight on the timeline. Okay. Okay, Wednesday, July 11th. Get this straight. Wednesday, July 11th, Alexis and the home health nurse meet at the house to discuss a course of action. She recommends calling the police. He claims the car was gone again, but I think that was not when she was there. He comes back later and says the car was gone again. I think that's all fishy. Anyway, this was on July 11th. He meets with a social worker. The social worker says, standing at the house, you need to call the police because it's been over a week. You need to call the police. Ken Main says he called the police. Guess when he called the police? Yeah, no one called. What the heck? Yeah, why didn't he call? Why did he wait a week? Yeah, waited days. What the heck? This is his baby. Even if he doesn't care about her, his baby is in the care of somebody who is not responding. Mail's piling up. Isn't he worried enough to call the police and ask for a welfare check? But apparently not. When do you think Ken Main says that he thinks that he called the police before the fire was set? Could she have been autistic? Who knows? Who knows? And guys will go with women because they want to. Because he was the killer. It certainly looks that way, in my opinion. By the way, he claimed he passed a polygraph. The police later said he didn't pass a polygraph, asked him for a second one. He refused to do it. Ken Mains doesn't like polygraphs. He says they're just tools. I agree with him on that. I mean, a polygraph is a tool to get somebody to talk. It's not really reliable. Her mom should have called also, and mom didn't. And it's interesting that mom didn't. But I think I personally think he's manipulative. And I think he talked to the mom and convinced her that, let's wait it out. That's what I think. I don't think that, personally, I think the whole sink thing is just a bunch of bull. That's what I think. Ken Mains says, because nobody's answering, Ken Mains says he thinks he called, in other words, the social worker, let me read this again. On Wednesday, July 11th, the social worker said you should call the police. When do you think he called the police? Do you think he called the police on July 11th? This to me is the big key that Ken Mains seems to have just completely lost. If the social worker says you should call the police on July 11th, it's already been over a freaking week. Did he call on July 11th? No, he didn't. That's correct. He did not. He did not call on July 11th. So he doesn't leave and go home and immediately call the police, or call the police from his freaking car on his cell phone saying, hey, look, the social worker and I have been here. She's still not here. We're both concerned. Do a welfare check. He did not. He called the police on July 12th, the day after she told him that. What do you think happened from July 11th? So they're at the house on July 11th. He calls July 12th in the morning. What do you think happened between the time she told him to call the police and the time he actually called the police? What do you think happened that Ken Mains seems to, for some reason, ignore? The fire. 100% the fire. The fire. The fire. She tells him to call the police on the 11th. He doesn't do it. At 4 a.m, the fire starts. And then he calls the police in the morning and they tell him to come in and they say, oh, he had no idea there was a fire. House caught fire. He still had some things to take care of. Yes. So in other words, when she told him to call the police, there might have been a concern that nobody had been in the house. I don't believe he'd been in the house. The mail's piled up, the hamburgers. I don't think anybody had been in the house. At that point, he might have said, when the social worker said, call the police, he's like, shit, did I leave something in the house? What about the baby's body? Blah, 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 blah. I better take care of it. That's what I think happened. Now, what Ken Mains said happened was that when he put the note in that said, I'm going to call the police, that triggered her to come back and kill everybody, set the house on fire. That was the trigger. No, I think the trigger was the social worker told him he needs to call the police. Obviously, she was going to do it, but he didn't. And therefore, he's like, oh, I'm screwed now. I think the trigger was for him, not for her. So I don't know how Ken Mains thinks that note was something, because if that was true, he's giving her more time to contact him too. You need to contact me. Why the hell does he need her to keep doing this after a freaking week of, he calls all the time, says, I'm sorry, goes to the house. He's not, for God's sakes, just call the police and ask for a welfare check. But he doesn't do it. And he doesn't do it till after the fire starts. It is kind of laughable. I mean, and yeah, Coincidentally, that I like Kara's correct. Coincidentally, the next day. I like it. Oh my God. And yeah, and he's buying. This is very true. I'm glad you pointed that out, Liz. First-time situational killers do not cover their tracks very well. And I'm so glad you said the word situational killers, which I hope you learned from me. I've said this over and over again, the difference between serial killers and situational killers. A situational killer is someone who kills one time specifically because of the situation. Now, it can be in a rage. It can be because that person's going to rat them out on something. It's a situation. They're not killing for the thrill of the kill. They're killing because of the situation. Now, mind you, somebody like Drew Peterson apparently killed more than once. So people say, oh, he's a serial killer. No. He was a repeat situational killer. In other words, I think he tried to knock off the first wife. The second wife drowned in the bathtub. She was a problem. And then the third wife vanished. So he was a situational killer, probably because the third wife was going to rat him out on the second wife. Joran van der Sloot, situational killer. Actually, it was date rage. He was a date rape rage killer. He wasn't a serial killer because I don't think he intended to ever kill either one of the women he killed. But when they wouldn't put out, he got pissed off and he killed them. That's it. So he's a date rape situational killer, which is different than a serial killer who kills for the purpose of specifically wanting to rape and murder, or just wanting to murder. You don't have to rape. Son of Sam said that. He goes, "Oh, I wasn't going to rape you. I was just going to kill you." So don't be so bent out of shape. I'm only going to kill you. He liked to shoot people at a distance, but that was his thrill. Was the moment he had the power and control of doing that. It wasn't because there was any situation that required him to get rid of somebody or shut them up. It's like he just wanted to do it. So there's a serial killers do that, and then they take time off, and then when life gets bad again, they want more power and control, and they kill again, and then they kill again, and then they kill again. That's a serial killer. This will be a situational killer where something. Now, I'm not saying he did it. I'm just saying all the evidence points to him. I cannot not see. She didn't even have internet. She didn't have any little hidden lover. There's no evidence of that. There's no evidence she had postpartum depression. There's no evidence that she drove that car by herself then. If there was no extra lover driving the car seat was way too far back. It was backed into space. She didn't drive the car. So she didn't have a fake lover. She didn't drive the car. And there's only one person left, and that's this guy. The last person who saw her, the last person had an issue with her, the person who called over and over again, claimed things were what they were. And then when he went to the police after the house burned down. Everything points to Alex. So I do not know how Ken Mains went off the rails on this and decided she was involved. She had to be involved, Ken says. She had to be involved either by herself or with somebody. It's nonsense. Now, just because the vehicle was a bit of a distance away. That is Ken Mains' big issue, I think. But it was found at a location only he and Joey would know. So if Joey wasn't involved in what happened, then it was absolutely Alex. It's only one of two choices. I don't believe Joey in any way. I think she was dead on the 3rd. So how the hell could she be involved in moving her car to State College? And who else would know to move it to State College except for Alex? Now, why would Alex move it to State College? And how would he get from State College back to his house in Clearfield, which is an hour away? Well, my belief is that he could have had two choices. He could have moved the car to a bus station, which would have been a smarter move, and then make it look like she ran off on the bus. Why did he not choose that? I don't know. If he put the car on the side of the road someplace, then people would say he killed her and dumped her body. So I get the reason why he wouldn't put her car on the side of the road. But a bus station would have been smarter. But maybe his thought was, well, if I put a bus station, she doesn't get on the bus, and there's no evidence she got on the bus because she would have to get a ticket. And so maybe he thought, I'll put the car back at her place where we used to live, and that will connect the car to her. How would he get then? So he does that because he comes up with some idea, maybe meth infused, but whatever. So he puts the car there, and how does he get back? An hour is an hour away. And that's a big sticking point with Ken Mains. And he just pointed out he could have somebody pick him up. He could hitchhike. Well, first of all, if he's involved in drugs, it doesn't mean because the car ended up at that location, it doesn't mean he didn't go to his house first. So in other words, if he burns up the house in Sykesville, he could have gone to Clearfield first, which is where he lives. And then he could have said to somebody, hey, dude, one of his meth buddies, hey, I need you to follow me to State College. I got to dump this car. And I'll pay you so much money or give you so much meth, whatever, if you bring me back from State College, and shut the hell up. Possible? Sure. Or did he go to State College and just get on the road and put his thumb out, and some trucker picked him up, and and once the trucker picks you up and dumps you somewhere, and then the trucker's now on the West Coast, he doesn't even hear about this freaking case. He doesn't remember the hitchhiker picked up in that particular town, and he just gets away with it. Gets lucky. So to me, it makes more sense that since he knew that's where there was a connection for her with that location. Either she or he, as Ken Mains does say, had to have taken the car there, or had the person drive the car there. If she's dead, she can't take the car there. She can't have anybody else take the car there. So it's only him. So I'm going to stick with only him. I do not understand. Now, could I prove it's him at this point in time? No. I don't know what the police are doing about this case. I mean, obviously it's gone to hell in a handbasket. I don't know if he's in prison for life now for running an entire meth ring, but he needs to be in prison for life. Will he ever admit he'd had something to do with this murder? I don't know. I don't know what they lack as far as evidence goes. So there's a big difference between solving a case and proving a case. And one of the reasons I stopped doing a lot of cold case work was because I would go to police departments and I would look at a cold case and I would solve it. I would say, oh my God, you didn't look at this person. Here's all the evidence that supports this person doing it. And then they're like, shit. Well, we don't have the evidence to prove it now because years have gone by and the evidence has gone missing. We looked this way when we should have looked this way, and we can't prove it. So they would thank me very much and hide that file right back where it came from. And that would be the end of it. And I understand that because if you didn't solve it in those first 48 and get the evidence, you may never have the evidence to go to trial. And therefore, you can solve the case, but you can't prove the case. In my opinion, having looked at this case for the very minimal amount of time that I've looked at it, I could say, in my personal opinion, I solved the case. Can I prove he did it? No. And I don't know that a prosecutor could prove he did it at this point in time because the entire evidence, what we have is a lot of behavioral evidence, which is circumstantial. It's interesting. I mean, I don't buy his stories. I don't buy his claims. He was the last person that saw her. He was the most likely person to have done something to her. And, but I don't have the proof that he set the fire. I don't have the proof he killed the baby. I don't have the proof he killed her. I don't have the proof he set the fire, and I don't have the proof he drove the car to that location. Do the police have any proof? I don't know. I don't know about his alibi. I don't know whether they should have checked every, I mean, I don't know what they did back in the day. Of course, they didn't have as many cameras back in the day either. So, I mean, was there any proof he was on the road driving the vehicle? Was there any? No, they apparently did not have the proof at that time to say this guy did it. I personally think the police believe he did it. I think they think he did it because, quite frankly, there's just nobody else. And the Ken Mains saying that he thinks that she had possible postpartum depression, and that's the prevailing theory. I don't know what he was smoking that day when he did the video. But I say he's got a lot of good points in the video about how to look at different issues of the crime. But I don't know where he went off the rails here. I just don't know. He seemed to be obsessed with the fact that she had something to do with what happened to the baby, and that he was telling the truth, which I find really odd. I really do find that odd, because I don't see that at all. I just don't. Yeah, I don't. Let me go back to some of your comments. Oh, okay. Why kill the baby but keep the 2-year-old? Oh, wait. The 2-year. Okay, so there was another child involved. Did he not want more responsibility? Was a murder an accident? I mean, it could be the baby's just freaking screaming. I mean, I don't know. People don't seem to understand how annoying babies are. I mean, that's one of the reasons I tell women, you got to be very careful about bringing men into your home who are not even the father of the child, because they don't have any love for that child. And when that little child just keeps screaming and screaming and screaming, they just want that baby to shut the hell up. And I remember this from when I was home with my first baby, my beautiful little baby girl. And I loved my baby girl. When my baby girl was born, my daughter Jennifer was now, a detective, now in her 40s and a detective. And I remember looking at her, and I fell madly in love with my baby. I did. I fell madly in love with my baby. And but I was in an apartment in Long Beach, California, just an efficiency. We just had one room, and my husband was off going to some training program every day, leaving me alone with the baby. And I've always said that one of the problems with postpartum depression is not that there's any chemical involvement, but just the fact that you're freaking alone with a baby. Whereas in many countries, you have aunties and grandmas and people around you. So when you finish nursing the baby, you just hand the baby away, and then you go to sleep while they walk the baby around. But in the United States, I was home with that baby, and my daughter, when she was a baby, was a terrible baby. She was a terrible baby. My son, my next child, was a great baby. He was like so easy. My daughter was not. She never slept. She nursed constantly. She was really a problem. And I remember thinking one day when I was alone with that child, I remember thinking, if I didn't love you so much and you weren't so cute, I would pick you up by your ankles and slam you into the doorframe. That thought actually crossed my little head. I mean, obviously, because I did love her and she was my daughter, I didn't do it. But what if I were some guy that was living with me and that little baby just wouldn't shut the hell up? And some fathers, no, even if they're real fathers, feel that way as well. So can somebody kill a baby? Yes, it can. Now, am I saying that this guy killed this baby? I'm not saying that. But it's also possible. Here's another thought on that. It's possible that he killed her, and then the baby was there, and he didn't know what to do with it. So he put the baby in the bathtub just to be in a safe place, right? To take care of her body. And then he couldn't figure out a way to come back in the house and take care of the rest of it. So eventually the baby just died. And then he realized the baby probably was dead. And then he went and burned the house down. That would be my analysis of what most likely happened. So I don't necessarily believe he killed the baby. I believe he might have left the baby. And too many days went by and it died on its own. And that's when he realized he was going to be even in more trouble. So he burned the house down. That would be my final. If I were coming up with a theory, that would be my final theory. What do you think about that particular theory? Cauliflower says, I remember with my first baby, 6 weeks old, I thought, oh my God, if I were a dog, I'd be done with this. That's funny. Yeah. Yes. Babies are very tiring. They're tiring little critters. Where would her body be? Don't know. She's never been found. Would it be somewhere familiar to him? Yes. That would be where I would be looking, because one of the things about, like, for example, when serial killers abduct somebody, they're more likely to abduct the person out of a place that they're less familiar with than where they dump the body. because abducting them just means you look both ways, nobody's watching. But when you go to dump a body or bury a body, you got to worry that it's going to take some amount of time. Either a car is going to pull over and it's going to see your car, or you're going to have to be digging your shallow grave and somebody's going to see that. So you usually want to make sure where you dump the body, you're real familiar with the area. So you don't pull in and start carrying the body out of your car and a bunch of teenagers there going, dude, what you doing? She dead? I mean, you want to make sure that doesn't happen. You want to make sure it isn't a place police just park their vehicles to just kill time while they're on their shift, drinking coffee. You want to make sure you're not going someplace where you're going to get caught. So yes, so they theoretically should have examined all of that if they did. Frida says it's the most plausible scenario. No evidence at all for PPD or another person involved, and perhaps not. Thank you. I think it does make. Oh, that's very nice of you. That's the best theory I can come up with under the circumstances that makes more rational sense than anything else. But again, proving is another issue than theorizing it. And again, this is an educational channel, so I'm trying to help you theorize. And what I want that detectives do, and this is one of my big aims in life, eventually, if I ever get it done, is that I want detectives in the first 48 to profile their crimes themselves, because they're not going to have help from profilers. They need to be as aware as they can be of how to analyze evidence so that they get the evidence, more evidence that they need in order to prosecute. Because it always comes down to the prosecution issue. Because if you screw up getting the evidence, you screw up the prosecution. Because the prosecutor, sometimes the prosecutor's lame and won't do their job. Sometimes the prosecutor's overzealous and takes the case to court they shouldn't even bother to take to court. But sometimes the prosecutor only can work with what they got. They're a good prosecutor and they're like, I think you're right. I think this guy did it, but what do you got? What proof do you have that I'm going to walk into a court and convince a jury that this guy did? That the defense is going to say this guy cared about his fiance. He cared about her. He called and called and called and he apologized and apologized and apologized. He cared about her. And the jury might buy it. They'll say, well, the car kept going, coming and going. Therefore, it was clear she was alive. And the prosecution says, hey, but I think it was only his claims that the car came and went. But does the jury understand that? Or does the jury think that, well, she was alive and she had postpartum and that she had issues? And, when it comes to, again, the civilian jury system, it's a roll of the dice. So a prosecutor, generally speaking, wants to be reelected and wants to keep their job. They don't want to take to court, except on rare occasions when they're pressured by whatever, and they think they can win regardless of the fact they have no evidence. They, generally speaking, want to have enough evidence to win. That's why they want to, when you say, well, I've got a 98% win record, it's because you only took cases to court that you knew you could win. You weren't going to take the cases to court that were shaky. You'd be stupid to do that. And probably you shouldn't do that, because if you don't have enough to win, you shouldn't be in court. Even if you know who did it, or even if you believe you know who did it. So I believe the police believe he did it. And now that, of course, he's I assume he's in prison now for the meth ring he was running, maybe they're hoping that he'll finally confess, 20 some years later. Lady Jane says, maybe the baby was bathed in the sink and he grabbed the baby and it fell and died. Then have to kill Joey to stop her from calling 911. That's an interesting point. Maybe, we'll never. The thing is, they don't have any proof that the baby. They don't have any evidence from the autopsy, which I don't have evidence of. They didn't say anything about damage to the skull, broken bones. They didn't seem to say anything about that, so I don't know that it's true. But anything could happen. You're perfectly right that could be true too. He could have actually, maybe he was annoyed with her because she was bathing the baby in the sink, and he had some stupid idea that baby had to be bathed in a bathtub. I've never bathed a baby in a bathtub until they were old enough to be a toddler. So personally, I think the guy's off, doesn't understand things. How dirty was the sink? Really? I mean, what does he think a dirty sink is? I question that whole thing. Like right now, I'm looking over my sink. I got some dishes in there. Okay, but if I were going to bathe my a grandchild in the sink, I only have one, and she's 11, so she won't fit. But let's say I decide I'm going to go over there. I would wash the dishes. But if the dishes were washed, could there be a few little specks of something in the drain? I suppose. But generally speaking, when you're bathing a baby in the sink, usually people just take a sponge and go like that and just basically clean it out. They put water, they put the drain in, they put water in the sink with soap bubbles. How dirty is it anyway? You know, is this guy just obnoxious? You shouldn't be baby. Is he just obnoxious? And maybe he's just obnoxious. Because so just again, everything. He's the last one there to see her alive, and he's giving his story. It's a claim, and there's not necessarily any proof that A, she was even bathing the baby in the sink, B, that it was a dirty sink, and C, that he was that upset about it. But if he was that upset about it, maybe it's just a jerk. Don't know. We'll never know because nobody else was there. All we know is that the hamburger's still on the counter, purse is still there, ID is still there, baby's dead, house burned down, and she did not do it. That's just nonsense. I'm sorry, Ken Mains. I have no idea where you lost your mind on that one. Okay, that's a good point. Okay. Mentioning the sink scenario seems very specific, so probably is important in some way. It's a good point, Lisa. It could be. It does very specific. I like your concept on that because sometimes when people point out something and make it and give you the entire scenario of it, you do wonder that some aspect of it was true. And it could be that she was bathing the baby in the sink, which is what I would have been doing, for God's sakes, because that's what you do. I mean, I don't understand this whole thing about the bathtub because it hurts your back. You can bathe the baby in the bathtub, but you have to have some kind of thing to put the baby on, and then you got to lean over the bathtub and hurt your back. So the sink is not an unreasonable place, but maybe, I don't know what happened with the first child, whether he was even, looked like he might have been around for this first child, but who knows what his issues were. So maybe she was bathing the baby in the sink and he was being a jerk about it. But then what happened? Was the sink incident a catalyst for something happening? In other words, a domestic argument that turned into homicide? Something happened to the baby at that point in time? We'll never know. We just won't. Now, let's put this way. Somebody else said, well, what if he confesses and says exactly what happened? Can you believe him? I mean, even if he said this is what happened, you can't believe him. So the problem is we'll never, ever know. And people don't like not knowing. They always think that there has to be an answer. Well, sometimes there's just none. All we know is that this is all we know. They were both in the house. He was the last one who claims he saw her and the baby. And that's all we know. We actually don't know what happened in the house. We don't know if the sink incident happened. It didn't happen. We don't know we just have no idea. All we know is the three of them were in the house at the same time. Then we don't know when we say he left, we don't know that he left. He might have left with her in the car, in a rug and in a blanket. So maybe they left together, but she wasn't alive. So this is all the stuff we don't know. All we know is the baby. I would say the baby remained in the house because she was clearly not answering phone calls. Nothing was happening there. Mail was piling up. I don't believe the car moved. So I believe the baby was in the house. I don't believe the baby was removed from the house and brought back to the house. That I find unlikely. So I believe the baby was in the house, probably put into the bathtub for one reason or the other, because that's where it was found. I don't believe it was put in like days later. Okay, I'll take that back. let's say he says, he leaves his message, I'm going to call the police. Then he rushes back and 4 o'clock in the morning to set the place on fire. He goes into the house with the gas can. We don't know that the baby was in the bathtub before he entered the house. We don't know that. Maybe the baby was lying on the kitchen floor. Maybe the baby was in a bed. We just don't know. Maybe he just put the baby in the bathtub for some reason. See, these are the things we don't know. Myself, if I were going to create a scenario, and I want to say create a scenario because there's a difference between coming up with a scenario which is somewhat fictional than having it based on evidence. Now, the baby was found in a bathtub. My scenario is that he may have put the baby in the bathtub alive because he killed her and he didn't know what to do with the baby. So he put the baby in the bathtub. Therefore, it is in a safe place. And he just left the house. And he never got back in time to save the baby and didn't know what to do with it. So the baby expired. And then he came back and saw the baby was dead and just set the house on fire. That's my theory as to the most likely scenario. But that is a scenario. And I can't even say it's based partially on evidence because the baby was found in the bathtub. But for me to say that he put the baby in the bathtub because it wasn't dead yet, because he'd done something to her, is a theory and a scenario. It's a scenario more than even a theory. I think it's a very likely scenario, but I can't prove it. So, Rainey says, maybe in his warped mind, nobody would blame him for killing Joey for bathing the baby in a dirty sink. That's an interesting point. He may have thought, well, if all goes to hell, people at least understand that I had a reason to be upset with it. Yeah, good point. Why does it make him look suspicious? Well, this is Ken Main's theory. Why would he mention a sink if it then points to him getting triggered by it, making him look suspicious? This is Ken Main's theory that only reason he mentioned it is because it really was true and he was innocent. But I have dealt with enough psychopaths that will create a theory or a scenario because they think it's believable to other people and will work in their favor. So you have to be very careful of that. And that's why I think Ken Mains was wrong on that. I think just because he says, oh, well, he could have come up with a better statement, like we had a great time and I said, I love you. And she said, I love you. And I went home. That would make him look more innocent. And he put himself in looking slightly guilty by this argument that therefore he's telling the truth. Sometimes that can be true, but sometimes in a psychopath's mind, if he is one, he might think that he has to come up with a reason for why his girlfriend / fiance is not responding to him. Because if they had a good time and she's not responding, then what's the reason for that? I mean, he should be then immediately upset. See, okay, here we go. When you're going to call the police to check on somebody, if your girlfriend is happy, not having any issues with you, everything's great, you just left her happy the day before, and now she won't respond to any of your phone calls and won't answer the door, shouldn't you call the police on day one? Nah, of course you would, because you're like, hey, there's no reason. We're on great terms. Why would she said she loved me when I walked out the door? Why would she not answer my phone calls? You will be calling the police on day one. It takes over a week, and not until the social worker forces him into it, because he's like, well, she's got a reason to be mad at me. She's just pissed at me. And that's why I'm accepting that she's not answering my phone calls. You see, that is what I think he did. So you got to be careful about how you look at why somebody would or would not do something, because I think he specifically gave that story to make it look like she had no reason to respond to him for all of those days, which gave him all those days to get rid of her body and get rid of evidence. So Rainey says, very good point, Pat. That argument actually gives him a reason for why he didn't check on her. Absolutely. Absolutely. And why he can tell mommy, oh, don't worry about it. She's just mad at me. Because if she wasn't mad, wouldn't everybody be really freaked? I mean, she's fine yesterday, and now she's not answering any of our phone calls. He's not that stupid. Carla says he had to delay the discovery of her disappearance to increase the number of other possibilities about what happened to her. Very good, very good. And apparently, guess what? It worked. It worked. And even got Ken Maines to believe it. I mean, it worked. So, So, it's, to me, that the problem is you got to be very careful of tunnel vision. You really do. And it's so on one hand, you don't want to say, you don't want tunnel vision to say, oh my God, she's clearly, she emotionally as a teenager, she's messed up. She once went on the internet and said something, got almost pulled into some scam thing, and she couldn't handle herself, and therefore she's got PTSD. She's got postpartum depression, and she must have done it. You can get tunnel vision that way. Theoretically, you can get tunnel vision this way too, and say this guy's a scumbagging meth user, and wouldn't marry the girl, and didn't want to. So this must be the guy. He's the last guy that saw her. You can get tunnel vision there too. So the tricky part is not to get tunnel vision at all, to accept that there's two possibilities as far as looking at their personalities, looking at their histories, looking at all this stuff, but paying most attention to the thing called evidence and making sure that you don't conflate claims with evidence or your own feelings with evidence. You got to make sure that you're looking at what you're actually looking at. And since her internet was off for an entire month, no evidence at all that she was interacting with anybody else. A car that she clearly wasn't driving, and that she was likely dead on the 3rd when the maggots started multiplying on the hamburger, means it's very unlikely that she had anybody else involved, that she was running away, that she was having an internet lover coming down. All that stuff is such nonsense. I just can't. Just blows me away that was even consideration, because no evidence pointed that direction. All the evidence did point over here, because he was the last one to saw her, came up with a story to prevent people from calling the police. He over apologized, over showed up, made claims about the car being missing, which I don't think were substantiated. Then when he was told by the social worker he should call the police, he delayed till the next morning, and in the meanwhile, the fire started. I'm going to say everything points this way. The evidence points over here. Whether it can be proven is another question, but the evidence points here and almost 0 points over here. So that's the importance of analyzing based on evidence as opposed to certain opinions, or feelings about somebody or whatever. It's hard to profile when there's not enough evidence to link everything in a linear way. It is difficult. One can still profile or analyze evidence, but one has to be careful as to filling in stuff that isn't there. That's a problem. In my last video that I did on which was sorry, I just got to look it up now. Was the last video I did was on what the heck is it? Jeez. Hold on a second. That was the Melissa Wolfenberger case. There was interesting evidence, but there was so much missing that to fill it in would be, in terms of prosecution, would be egregious. But the prosecution did it anyway and took it to court, and the jury found that Chris Wolfenberger, which is the husband of Melissa Wolfenberger, not guilty. They did that because the evidence wasn't strong enough to prove that Chris Wolfenberger did it. And I will say this, there was way more in that case that was questionable that Chris Wolfenberger was involved in spite of some of the things he said and did. Whereas in this case, I think the evidence is pretty strong that this guy was involved in what happened to his fiance. But again, in both cases, I don't know that either case had enough to go to court with, although the Wolfenberger case to go to court shouldn't have. And this case has never gone to court. But I also don't know what else the police have. Did the police have enough that the prosecution could have taken this guy to court? I don't know. But he's obviously 20 years, he hasn't been arrested for that case. And again, he'll be in prison for other things. Yeah, so you can profile. The difference to understand this is you can analyze a case, but you have to clearly state what supports your analysis, what the rationality behind supporting your analysis is. And as a profiler, when I profile a case, it was supposed to be for the detectives, period, for the detectives. So in other words, detectives would say, what do you think, Pat? And I would say, here's how I'd analyze this case. I would look at this case and say, look, I'm saying every bit of this evidence supports that this guy's involved. Here's why. I'll give you 10 different reasons. This guy is most likely the killer of his wife and the baby, his fiance and the baby. This is why I believe you should be focused on this guy. And I would support it with evidence. Now, that's my role. Now, the role of the detectives is to actually, from that, I've given an opinion, and I'm hoping that the analysis helps them focus on what direction they're going to take the case. That's it. Doesn't mean you shouldn't look at her at all, or the phantom lover that campaign thinks exists. I'm not saying you shouldn't look at the option. Don't have total tunnel vision. Maybe you're going to go 90% over here, but at least have 10% over here, just in case it turns out to be this freaky. It's not him, right? So my thing is to analyze the case and provide an analysis of the case. And then the detectives would take it from there to search for more evidence to get it to the point where, if I'm correct, they can take this guy they can arrest the guy with probable cause, and the prosecution will have something to take him to court with. Or they can follow my lead and come up with nothing, and then check out this this other possibility and come up with something and go that direction. I mean, the whole point is to be a consultant as a profiler, not as a pronouncer of absoluteness. And when I profile on internet, it is not for the purposes of solving a case. It's for helping people understand how you would analyze a case. For detectives especially, if you're a detective watching the show, that you can learn more about how to analyze a case so you can analyze this yourself, because most of the time profilers don't exist in your life. They don't work for the police department. The police department's not bringing them in. You are the profiler on the case. Detectives in this are basically criminal profilers that just haven't had enough training, in my opinion. But if they did have more training, they might have come to the same exact conclusion and then focused on him and maybe gotten evidence early enough to take him to court. I don't know what went wrong in this case. Maybe the detectives worked their butts off. Maybe they did think he did it and they just couldn't prove it. Sometimes it happens, and it's not the detective's fault. They've done a great job. They just, it's the way life goes. Sometimes it sucks. But that's what profiling is. So you can profile a case with whatever amount of evidence you have, but it's only to help determine avenues of investigation, not as, a complete absoluteness on the case. So I just want to clear that up. It's just important to understand how that works. Because I think people misunderstand what profiling is. They think somehow profiling is this magical psychic crap that, you can just look at the case and go, Great Karnak, and Jarna Carson used to do the Great Karnak go, and it is clearly this guy, It's not, it doesn't work that way. So I do respect Ken Maines for giving his explanations for why he thought she was involved. I think he's wrong about it. I just don't agree with his explanations. I think they're off key. I don't know. I don't quite understand it. But a lot of his reasoning for why when he's talking about how to look at cases, like, for example, he says, which I agreed with him, he said, people say there's no such thing as coincidences, and that's not true. sometimes there are coincidences, and I agree with him because that is true. There are coincidences. You go, what the hell? I can't believe it. It's so freaky, but it's true. So he's correct. There are such things as coincidences. I agree with him on that. I agree with him on a lot of the things he talks about on how, like, I agree with him that sometimes you can't, when a parent tells you that my child would never do that, he's right. You can't believe that necessarily. So a lot of his concepts on how to, when you're dealing with a case, I had no problem with. I just don't understand how he came to his conclusions. I just thought that was very strange. And generally speaking, I'll say this. I have disagreed with him on a few cases, and on a great many cases, I come to a similar conclusion. And that's why I have, over the years, promoted him as one of the channels to watch, because at least he does explain. He explains the case. He explains how he comes to his conclusions, and it's educational. And so, I even though I say I have issues with his attitude toward me and his love of psychopathic killers in the advancement of his career, I'm not going to entirely say don't watch his channel, because there's so few channels out there that actually go through the thinking process. I think that what's his name again? I can never pronounce the guy's freaking name. Lavoisier. I think he does a pretty good job on that too. There's very few. There was a really great guy from Scotland Yard. He started a channel and he was just stunningly good. And then he realized that he was probably going to like work his ass off and not make a penny on YouTube. So he finally said, "Oh, screw it." And I was bummed because I really liked him. I thought he was really good. I just think we need. I would like to see more professionals explain things, and because I think that the whole thing is about education and not just about how cool the crime was. So that's an interesting point, Christoph. Let me put it this way: how much you agree, at the end of the day, it all comes down to the right conclusion. Yeah. And I would say this: there is no harm in having two opinions on a case that help investigators investigate maybe two different avenues. There's nothing absolutely wrong with that, because maybe my avenue, I believe this is I'm like heavy on this avenue, okay, and he's heavy on this avenue. I do not object to detectives on the case and looking at both avenues. There's nothing wrong with that. Sometimes you have to figure out how much time you want to spend on each one of the avenues. I personally go with 90%, 10%. He might go with 90%, 10%, so there's nothing wrong with more than one opinion in the investigative stage, because a lot of times we're missing pieces of information. We're trying to analyze. There's nothing wrong with that. When it gets to a court of law, you hope that the evidence is solid enough that there's only one opinion. But yeah. I agree with your analysis, Pat. It's just so frustrating when no justice is served. That does suck. And people get away with awful crimes due to not enough evidence to prosecute. It is very frustrating. I have learned to deal with this kind of thing because I've worked enough cases, and I worked pro bono for many years. And when I say work pro bono, I mean I spent my own money to fly to location, rent a car, get a hotel room for a week, work for no money, solve the case. And I put the quotes around it, solve the case. And that I think that I did bring information to the investigators. I think that was overlooked. And they're like, wow, okay, this could be we now understand that the evidence supports this guy is guilty, but it was too late. And because it was too late, again, they just shelved the kit. They just said, "Thanks, Pat." And I understood why they were doing it, because there's nothing they can do at that point. They can't tell the family. They'd say, "Oh, she couldn't help us," because they can't tell the families, "Oh yeah, she's pointed out a guy we overlooked." Well, that's like political suicide. It's like departmental suicide. They can't do that because it's too late. And so therefore, I just spent an entire week of my life and a whole bunch of money working on a case that I believe I know who did it, but it'll never go to trial. And I have to watch that. And it's extremely frustrating. I worked on a case. I don't know if I ever do the case on this channel. I worked a case in Texas. A little girl was murdered. And I was brought in by the family. And then it turned out that I agreed with the sheriff and not the family. And the sheriff asked if I could get the family to understand what was going on, and I did. And the family then turned around and said, "Okay, I get. We agree with. We understand now what you're saying. We agree now with the sheriff, and Pat Brown has made that clear." And the sheriff and I were working on a methodology to bring the guy in who did it, and it was going real well. And then the prosecutor in the town just said, "Stop. We're not gonna pursue it." So here I was in agreement with the sheriff's department. I wasn't going against them. I thought they did a good job. And then I brought more to the table and they were thrilled and we were all so happy. And then the prosecutor just shot us down. I don't know why. Some political thing. But I stopped doing a lot of cold case work at that point because I'm like, I'm spending a fortune. I'm going broke. And doing this because I wasn't getting I wasn't getting a lot of donations. Let's put it that way. So I was spending my own money, and I didn't object because I learned a lot during those years. And I mean, it really did help my understanding of everything. I mean, it made me a better profile, but it didn't help my income, at all. I mean, my ex-husband was like, my husband at that time was like, "You got to stop doing this because you're driving us broke." But it was very frustrating because I couldn't see things that I knew who did it, and yet nothing ever came of it. And I've learned over time, although it is frustrating and demoralizing, shall we say, I've also learned to accept reality. So I try not to get all, all depressed and curl up in a ball in my closet, because, and sometimes, it's really frustrating as a profiler when I know who did it. And I can't do anything about it. And sometimes I'm even, attacked, like, "Oh, she got the wrong guy," or whatever. And I'm like, I didn't, but I can't prove otherwise publicly. So I just, have to live with it. So I've had to have a sense of humor. Just have to have a sense of humor, about life. And, I'll say this, as my last comment, as I say what I've had to suffer. The family, not that family, this family, the family of murder victims. I'm not them. I am not them. And I'm a professional who gets insulted. I'm not a family member who's lost my loved one and sees no justice. So what I have to suffer is just nothing to compare against what a family has to suffer, which is why I can go on with life and do okay when they cannot. So just to be realistic about that, and because I've seen people say that, how much they suffer when they're not the family, and I'm like, get out of here, in comparison. And also, I will say this too. As a profiler, I come in late on a case. My daughter, who has been a homicide detective, she was there at the time, and I have seen her suffer far worse than myself. So, I just have to, yeah. So there's moments when I'm frustrated and annoyed, shall we say, and can't fight back, and I can't prove that I'm right when I know I was right. But in comparison, my God, I got nothing. I got nothing. I mean, the families, what they go through is 100 times worse. Yeah, it is. Just 100 times worse. Oh, go! Thank you for this, Marion. Just to have a happy ending here. For your information, Alex. Oh, he just got jailed for 17 years. I didn't see that. Yes, that'll at least put him away for most of his freaking life, which is what he deserves. Thank you for that. I appreciate that. You try to help. Well, I do. I try to help, but they say what I'm trying to help now, because I realize how things have worked out. I want to help detectives. I want to help detectives profile. I want to help people in criminal justice learn how to analyze better, because everybody else is going to be in the field from this moment on. They're the ones going to be in the field, not me. So I hope that I can offer something to help them move forward and do better in analysis of crime. And for the rest of you people who are here who are not in law enforcement, I always hope that whatever I teach here is applicable in a regular life. And it is applicable, because if this guy could be somebody in your daughter's life, somebody you have hooked up with, so if I can help you understand psychopathy, if I can help you understand behaviors, if I can help you understand analysis of facts, and that makes a difference in your life, maybe that prevents a crime. And I'll never know about it, but I'm happy to think that maybe it made a difference in somebody's life, with themselves or their children or their grandchildren or whatever. It's like, that's a cool thing. That's why I love education. I do. I love education. Haven't you Tetrafin? Yeah. Haven't I a profiling course for the police? Yes and no. I did develop the first criminal profiling program in the country, in the United States, for Excelsior College many years ago. I developed 5 courses. See if I can remember them: forensic pathology, psychopathology, serial homicide, criminal profiling, and crime scene analysis. Those 5 courses, 15 weeks apiece. It was an online program intended for detectives and people. A lot of people coming out of the military worked in intelligence stuff there. We're getting into law enforcement. 15-week courses, including actual crimes from my work, crime scene photos from my work. I mean, it was great. And so I developed these courses, and I was very pleased with it until the college. I had some detectives in there and some military people, online, and that they were great. And I had some other people in my classes who were wonderful. But I would say 80% of my classes were kind of wannabe profilers who didn't want to do any work. And I wouldn't allow plagiarism, and I wouldn't grade inflate. And within about a year, the college decided to let me go, because some of the students weren't happy that they weren't getting A's and B's. And then they watered my courses down from 15 weeks to 8. And then they had people teaching them who had no background in criminal profiling. I was going to mentor the new professors coming in, I was going to put a manual together for each one of the professors that would have the analysis of the cases, so they wouldn't get them all wrong, which they did once they got in there without any kind of support. It was a nightmare. And eventually, I'm not even sure those courses exist over there anymore. So I have been trying to figure out how to kind of redo that, but for a practical methodology for police detectives. And I do intend on this channel to put together practical profiling for police detectives. I already have it set up, and I have to get to the point where I'm going to start putting together these small segments, the videos on each one of the areas I want to address in these 5 areas. And then, of course, they can then come over to this part of the channel and then watch me analyze the cases. So there'll be 2 segments. So I think I'm going to do an entirely separate channel for the police detectives, and then recommend they come over here to go through all the cases. And then I was working with a wonderful police chief, and we were putting together a course for police detectives that would be taken as seminars around the country. And I have to admit, he was great. And I kind of failed because I became exhausted and trying to figure out how to even put this stuff together for this particular thing. So that's still it's still in the works. And I'm now 70, so I'm just like hoping I'll live to like a 90 or 100, because I got so much stuff to do. I just don't know if I can get it done. I just don't know. Well, oh, my tetrafin. I mean, people don't realize the amount of stuff, work it has to, to go into any of this stuff. I mean, my whole course for detectives was years ago. I mean, I was looking for somebody to do this course with me years ago, and I found this most wonderful detective who loved my stuff and I loved his stuff, and we were ready to go. I got him on board and we were ready to go, and then his wife had a major stroke, and then he had to give that up. And then I had like all these setbacks, and I found this wonderful guy like 10 years ago, and now it comes down to it was my fault. He was ready to go and I was exhausted. So so it's like he's still out there, and I keep hoping that as I get this thing done for the YouTube, I can also put it together so that he can take it forward to the police departments. So somebody give me methamphetamine. Maybe I should contact this guy. I need some energy. Oh, you hope that's very nice of you. I have not. Yes, I'm not having the migraine aura today, so I haven't had any weird things on the screen. I've been very careful. I do have an appointment with the ophthalmologist on October 2nd to set up the dates for the lovely surgery for the cataracts, and so looking forward to that. Yeah, doesn't that happen? Life happens. It really does. Les Nooch, I can say right. Yeah, I worked my ass off on that, and I got paid pittance, by the way. I really got screwed on that, but I did it because I wanted it so badly, and I worked so hard. I've been a whole year developing this program. I got paid like I would be embarrassed. I think I paid less than if I worked like a month at Wendy's, But then I was going to be the professor for the program, and they brought me up there, and they bragged about me, and they put me in all their advertising material, and I had some great students. I did, and the funny thing about it was when they do the rate your professor thing. So what would happen is the students that are all the cheaters, the ones who didn't want to bother to do any work, and they got C's, D's, or F's, they put as they would say, "Oh, worst professor ever had, bricks and mortar online." And then my A and B students put best professor ever had, bricks and mortar online. And I worked so hard to teach that I ended up earning less than minimum wage. Probably lucky if I got $5 an hour on that. As a professor with a master's degree who developed the course, because our educational system in the US sucks. It does. It just sucks. And it's such a shame because those courses were developed to truly educate, and the college was more interested in making a lot of money quickly. So anyway, I'll just bitch away here. Oh my God. Life is life, I've lived long enough to know that things aren't quite what you wish they were sometimes. Carla, thank you, Carla. You've made a huge difference. Pat encouraged and demonstrated to us how to be critical thinkers, how to follow logic, how to make good decisions. I appreciate that. One thing I have learned in life is that you ought to appreciate where things go well, because life is like that. You get some things that are good, some things that are bad. But if some things are good and you feel like that it's been advantageous, that you've helped people, I'm not just trying not to be too greedy sometimes in life and realize that, you're not going to achieve everything you want or get everything you want, so. But we also, hopefully we survive and we keep doing something useful for people. So, aren't you nice, Lisa? So satisfying to be at these live shows, absorbing the info and thoughts. Thanks, Pats and chat. Thank you guys for all being here. And what a crazy case. What an absolute crazy case. And I know it's a little confusing and a little, discombobulated, as my aunt would say. When we were young kids, she'd say discombobulated and made us laugh. But now I understand it. But it's a crazy case, and but it should have been solved, in my opinion. It should have been, but hopefully we can still at least keep learning. And who knows, maybe this character who is now in prison where he belongs, maybe he will fess up one day, or at least give his next side of the story. Thank you, Liz. I appreciate that. Oh, you're reading one of my books already. I'm so glad. Oh, Mac update. There's no Mac update. Looking over. He came in last night. He ate the food off my hand. He ate food, stood on my lap and ate food. He's doing his Mac thing. Mac the feral cat, in case you're wondering. Now been over a year and a half. He's pretty much at a stabilized point. But I keep hoping that one day he will let me touch him. He'll touch me, but I can't touch him. So we'll see if that ever changes. So I will see some of you here for the hangout during the week. And again, if you're new to the channel and you'd like to be in the chat room, click on the link below for the hangout and come to that and send along all your ideas who are here for what you want me to talk about at the hangout, which is just news and opinion and just whatever's out there. And so I'll see you guys. Hopefully, Mac is Mac, and yeah, he probably is. He's like got me pegged as such a sucker. I tell you, he really does. He's like, you're such a sucker. You know, I just take food from you and give you the stink eye and walk away, and you keep feeding me. What a moron. Anyway, thank you guys for being here, and I will see you either Wednesday or Thursday this week. Bye-bye.